Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we are so happy to have you here. Coming up today, we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming race for U.S. Senate. It is a race that is being overshadowed by the indictment of Senator Bob Menendez, and that's one that is getting plenty of attention from around the country as well as here in New Jersey. We have an all-star panel of guests here to talk about the race. Micah Rasmussen is the director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. He has more than 2 decades of experience in New Jersey politics. He's an adjunct professor of political science and also served as press secretary to former Governor Jim McGreevey. Joey Fox is a political reporter for the New Jersey Globe. He covers New Jersey's congressional delegation in Washington, D.C. And David Wildstein is the editor of the New Jersey Globe, which is the state's go-to resource for political news throughout the state. He's been involved in New Jersey politics for more than 4 decades and is the dean of the New Jersey Press Corps. So, David, let's go to you first. Can you set the stage? How did we get to where we are with the indictment of Senator Bob Menendez?
Just when you think you've seen everything in New Jersey, you read about the FBI coming into a United States senator's home and taking out gold bars. I mean, this has been sort of an out-of-body experience for New Jersey. We've never seen anything like it, and that has set up a competitive Senate primary. Senator Menendez has not said if he's going to run again or not. Very few people think he will. There are 4 candidates in the race on the Democratic side, and this is really between Andy Kim, 3-term congressman from South Jersey, and Tammy Murphy, the First Lady of New Jersey. And this weekend, the election starts. The primary is not till June, but voting starts this weekend. The Monmouth County Democrats are going to hold a convention. It's one of the most competitive conventions in the state. It's not one where any candidate's endorsement by party leaders necessarily means that the convention is going to go the same way. That's going to be followed up by our debate that we're all doing together on February 18th with Andy Kim and Tammy Murphy. And then the week after that is the Hunterdon County Democratic Convention. That's February 25th. And that also is wide open, not one of the counties that we can view any sort of predetermined outcome. So this is probably one of the best primaries New Jersey's seen in years.
Yeah. Micah, I want to go over to you now. When the news came out that Senator Menendez was being indicted, this isn't the first time he's been indicted. He was indicted and beat the charges back in 2017-18. But the speed at which people in New Jersey elected office came out and said, you've got to resign, this is not good, that was pretty shocking. And Andy Kim came out right off the bat saying, not only should you resign, but I'm going to jump in. So can you talk a little bit about how quickly people started looking at that seat?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was no coming back from the gold bars. It left nothing to the imagination. It was not like the last indictment where you were talking about doing a favor for a friend. You know, this was not something you could hide behind and say this was a friend. So it was very clear from everybody from the first minute that there was going to be no coming back from this, whether it was the public, whether it was voters, whether it was other politicians, other candidates thinking about getting into the race. Everybody knew there was no turning back from this. So, you know, Andy Kim, as he is going to talk about in our conversations, and I'm sure in the debate, and he made it very clear from the very first minute, from the very first day, he thought Menendez had to go. He didn't wait for other party officials. He didn't wait for the governor. He said, I think he's got to go. I think he's got to resign. He was the first one out of the box. Everybody else was sort of an hour later. So that was the first indication that things were going to be a little bit different. And then the next day, again, he didn't call party leaders, much to their consternation. He said, I didn't sleep well. I think I've got to get into this race. Somebody's got to challenge him, and it's going to be me. And so it was a very honest, unvarnished, just gut reaction, I think, that we saw. And it reminded a lot of people about the way he rolled up his sleeves on January 6th in the insurrection in the Capitol. He didn't really stop and think and make a calculated move. He reacted. He responded. He dug in. And he saw an opportunity to help. So, look, it's been a long time since we've had an open seat in New Jersey in the Senate. It doesn't come along very often. So he wasn't going to be the only Democrat. He wasn't going to be the only Republican. We've got a large field on both sides. But as David said, it's really on the Democratic side down to these two candidates, Tammy Murphy and Andy Kim. And we're going to see what happens with about the half dozen or so Republican candidates for really the first contested seat or closely contested seat in the Senate in New Jersey in a very long time.
Well, I want to follow up with you, Micah, on that. When you talk about how quickly Andy Kim reacted to it, and he didn't talk to anybody in the party, and talking about the county organizations, the political machine behind the scene has become really a big issue in the campaign. So can you talk a little bit about that and those dynamics? Because the First Lady, Tammy Murphy, is a candidate. She is running, and she is getting that organizational support. Did the timing of his announcement kind of play into that? And again, if you can kind of explain that county organization to our audience who's watching.
Yeah. I don't know that it played into it or became the reason for it. I think really once the First Lady decided that she was getting in the race, look, there is no more powerful office in New Jersey than the governor. The governor controls all the jobs. The governor controls all the state work, right? We have the strongest governorship in the country. And so anybody who is tied to government is looking for something from the front office. And he's going to be governor for the next 2 years, win, lose, or draw this Senate race. And so I think those who were close to those who were looking for something out of the governor's office very quickly made the calculation that you don't want to line up against the governor. You don't want to be out of the Murphy camp. You want to be in the Murphy camp if you can. So a lot of powers that be within the Democratic Party lined up very quickly with the Murphys, with Mrs. Murphy. I've noticed certainly over my time in politics, Laura, I'm sure you have too, it's pretty rare for somebody to put their name on criticism of the incumbent governor. You don't want to cross the governor. You don't want to get on the bad list. And so I think that's a dynamic that is working very much in Tammy Murphy's favor at this point. And it is one that has held, I think, Andy Kim back. Andy Kim is running almost as an insurgent at this point against those entrenched powers within the party.
David, I want to send it back over to you because Bob Menendez has not only not resigned, he says that he is innocent, that he will have his day in court. He's working to try and get these charges thrown out. How does that interfere with his ability to continue to do his job? I mean, it's got to be a bit of a circus in Washington, D.C. right now with him still, trying to do his job that he's still elected to do.
It's a good question. It's always a circus in Washington, D.C. This is just yet another act in the 4,000 rings of the circus on Capitol Hill. But it is almost impossible for him to mount a campaign at the same time that he's defending his charges. And I'll tell you why. A couple of things. One is money. He started out the year with or post indictment with $8.5 million in the bank. He's now down to $6.5 million. He spent $2 million of his campaign money on his defense team. That's going to continue to get expensive. He's got to leave himself with enough money there to mount the defense. He doesn't have personal resources, and quite frankly, his cash. The cash that he had at home was seized by the FBI. He doesn't have that. He's got to leave himself with a buffer in case he needs an appeal. The other thing is the calendar, the timing. The filing deadline for the Democratic primary is March 25th. His trial starts in May. His trial, if they go the way people expect it to, his trial will still be going on when people are voting for U.S. Senate, and that's almost an untenable situation for him. So he can't afford to mount a campaign. His poll numbers are down at around 8%. His approvals have tanked. I mean, my God, he's lower than Chris Christie. It's hard to believe that somebody could be less popular in New Jersey than Chris Christie. And Bob Menendez has gone out and done that. So I just don't think he's a factor. I think he is continuing his bluster because that's what Bob Menendez does. I've known him close to 40 years. It doesn't surprise me that he's going to maintain that he might run up until that filing day. But at the end, this is the end of his political career, and he's fighting for his freedom. I think more than he's fighting for his seat.
Yeah. Joey, I wanted to send it over to you. When you look at the two candidates in the Democratic primary, there are some other candidates in the primary, but these are the ones that are when you look at the polls, they're the ones, Andy Kim, Tammy Murphy. When you look at them, Andy Kim has a bit of an edge in the polls at this point. But when it comes to the differences philosophically or the differences on policy, do you see a big divide between Andy Kim and Tammy Murphy?
I don't, and I don't think that they really do either. I think given the opportunity to draw clear policy contrasts between themselves and their opponent, they have generally not done so. I think that both of them, for their recent time and involvement in politics, have been relatively mainstream liberal-leaning Democrats, who will likely agree with your average Democratic voter on most issues that they would come up to them on. So, ask them about abortion, they'll say that they will always fight for abortion access and a woman's right to choose. Ask them about gun control, and they will say that they support common sense gun legislation. I mean, all these things where, there is a typical Democratic Party answer, and I think that both of them are probably going to give it. This is an unusual race in the sense that it is focused, at least so far, very heavily on process issues and about how New Jersey's political system works and about the indictment on Senator Menendez and all these other things that oftentimes are not really top of mind for voters because, voters care about what a person is going to get done in office. But so far that those types of issues, there hasn't been a lot of daylight and there hasn't been a lot of focus on them. I think that when we have our debate, we'll kind of see whether we can tease out some of those differences. But at least in the campaigns the two of them have run, First Lady Murphy and Congressman Kim have not been really explicit about finding those differences between themselves.
Yeah, well, I'm going to pose this question to all of you, but I'll go to Joey first since you just brought it up about this campaign, this election so far being a lot about the process and the inside baseball. It's how the sausage is made. But what do you think the issues will be that affect voters that they will need to at some point start talking about? Joey, I'll go to you first.
I mean, I think honestly, a lot of it will be, as I was saying before, there are certain issues that voters tend to bring up a lot and care a lot about, like abortion, gun violence, the economy, jobs, all these things that are really frequent topics in elections that we saw in New Jersey just in 2022 and 2023. I think, frankly, one of the things that voters might be interested in, or at least should be interested in, is, these two people who are both running on relatively similar platforms. How are they going to accomplish what they want to accomplish in the Senate, which is, I've been down in Washington for about 6 months now. The Senate moves really slowly, and it's really hard to get anything complex done. The Senate most of the time is pushing through relatively small bills and nominations and things like that, and it does not take up really big sweeping legislation all that much. So how will these two people who are coming from outside the Senate, one from the House, which tends to be more active, more rambunctious, one from an entirely different political system of New Jersey, or any of the other candidates, any other Democratic or Republican candidates, how will they come in and get something done for these Democratic primary voters who really want to see action on these issues that they're not seeing in Washington?
Yeah. So, Micah, do you think that voters will look at Andy Kim as kind of an outsider or Tammy Murphy as an outsider? Because a lot of what I hear, and I think there was an article that said something about the governor's wife wants to run. Do you think that's going to resonate with the voters?
They've both been pretty close to the spheres of power in New Jersey and in Washington, right? Tammy Murphy's been a fundraiser for the Democrats for the last number of years. She has been, tied to her husband and his involvement in his fundraising and the National Governors Association and ambassador to Germany. So they've been involved for a long time. I don't really think that we'll see them running necessarily as outsiders. They certainly can run as outsiders to the Senate glacial pace that Joey referenced. I mean, they haven't been a part of that, so they can rail against that if they want to. But I will be interested to see how they can fill the shoes, and I don't mean the corrupt shoes of Bob Menendez, but the shoes of working on things that are important to the region and to the state, and the tunnel projects, and the Amtrak situation, and you know. Salt deductions, property tax deductions, right? So issues that have been of paramount importance to the delegation. Andy Kim, being a South Jersey congressman, really hasn't been involved in some of those issues up until now. So both of them are going to have to get up to speed, but we really are looking for our senator to deliver on those issues.
Yeah, David, and final thoughts on this before we take a break and then look at the Republicans. Do you think that this election is going to eventually get to the issues, or is it going to stick to where it is, where you have Andy Kim talking about the process, talking about politics as usual, about the party line and the county organization, and the corruption, those themes, and or do you think that we will get into some of the other issues that Joey and Micah talked about?
I think eventually it'll get over. The campaign will be over the process issues, but they'll always loom large in this race. And I have a feeling that this campaign is going to be a lot about personalities, and both of them telling their stories and seeing which one Democratic primary voters want. They both have compelling stories, and one of the things that I think is really interesting about this race is there are four candidates, and there are no white men running for the U.S. Senate. So New Jersey is going to do something different than most other states do. It's either going to elect its first woman U.S. senator, something that the Democrats first tried in 1930 and haven't attempted again since. It could be the first Asian American senator in a state where the Asian population is growing at a rapid pace. You have Patricia Campos Medina, could be the first Latina in the U.S. Senate. Larry Hamm, who I remember him fondly when I was back in grammar school, and he was a teenage school board member in Newark. He's been around for a very long time. It's a different kind of race, and I think what you're going to see are them talking about themselves. Andy Kim, clearly, whether you're a Kim supporter or not, I think it's indisputable that he's an authentic guy. Tammy Murphy is got her own serious policy chops. She's worked on some very important issues in terms of maternal and infant health. She's a businesswoman. She's a mother of four. Laura, how that is not an easy job, and that prepares you for some real life. So I think that's what New Jersey's going to look at is maybe candidates that are going to go down to Washington and probably vote the same way, but the state's got to decide about the personality. What kind of person do they want? What style do they want to be their senator?
All right, we're going to put a pause on it right there, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about the Republicans running on the Republican side for the seat currently held by U.S. Senator Bob Menendez. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones and our all-star panel, including Joey Fox of the New Jersey Globe, David Wildstein, editor of the New Jersey Globe, and Micah Rasmussen of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. So I want to talk a little bit about, David, you were talking about New Jersey is poised to make history with either perhaps the first female female U.S. senator or first Asian American senator. But one thing it probably won't do is elect a Republican, because the last time that happened was in 1972. So can you talk about the historical significance and why we do spend so much time talking about the Democrats, just historically speaking, why this is so difficult for the Republicans?
Yeah, I mean, New Jersey has gone longer than every other state in the union but Hawaii in electing a Democrat or a Republican to the U.S. Senate. New Jersey is a blue state on federal issues. I should point out that during that same period of time, New Jersey, blue New Jersey, has had Republicans occupy the governorship for just as long as it has Democrats. This is a presidential year. It's a presidential turnout, and you never say never. You don't know what the campaign's going to have in store. You don't know what direction the country's going to go in between now and November. But I think what you're going to find from people that follow U.S. Senate races across the country is a belief that the winner of the Democratic primary is the heavy favorite to go to the U.S. Senate.
Hey, Joey, can you talk us through who the Republicans are? We have so far 2 declared. There are other people who have expressed an interest. We're still waiting for them to file the paperwork. So can you set the stage of who we have so far at this stage of the game?
Yeah, so the 2 biggest names right now are Christine Serrano-Glassner, who is the mayor of Mendham Borough, which is a small suburb in North Jersey, and then Curtis Bashaw, who's a developer and hotel owner who is from Cape May County, so the far southern end of New Jersey. They are definitely the people who are commanding, of the declared candidates, they are definitely the people who are commanding the most attention right now. And we're already seeing sort of a geographical divide. There was a reason I mentioned where they were from, because we're very much seeing that a lot of North Jersey Republicans are tilting towards Serrano-Glassner, and a lot of South Jersey Republicans are tilting towards Bashaw. There are a few other candidates also running, and one major candidate, Alex Zidane, who is a former News 12 reporter. He has made a lot of moves towards running, but he hasn't officially gotten in the race. So, I mean, I think that you're seeing a field developing here that in the kind of unexpected event that David was talking about could take advantage of that. These are serious candidates. These are not also-rans who are just stepping up because Republicans need somebody. These are people with serious credentials and who have, positioned themselves to run serious campaigns. I think that if you had a situation where Senator Bob Menendez was the Democratic nominee again for Senate, you could see a really competitive race. That's not going to happen because Bob Menendez is not going to be the nominee again. But just sort of to think about it in the grand scheme of things, there are crazy situations, and Republicans are setting themselves up to have, at minimum, a real candidate to take advantage of it.
Yeah. So, Mike, I want to follow up with you on this part. If you're a Republican in this state and you're running, the odds are against you. But again, this is New Jersey. Anything is possible, right? We never want to say, oh, this could never happen. What do Republicans need to do to really make this race competitive? What do they need to do?
Well, there are different positions, for example, on President Trump, former President Trump, within the field. So Serrano-Glassner is she's an ardent Trump supporter. So she's going to be, putting her arms around him and inviting him into the state and asking to campaign with him whenever she can. You would probably get a very different reaction from Curtis Bashaw or from, some of the other candidates in the race. We don't really know their positions on Trump. But, logic would tell you Trump has struggled mightily in New Jersey, right? He lost 2 presidential elections in New Jersey by 14 and 16 points. So I think the first biggest question for anybody on the Republican side of this field is, how do you deal with Trump? How do you not offend Trump supporters while trying to put some distance between yourself and Trump for the vast majority of New Jersey voters who are he's just not their cup of tea.
Yeah. And David, as we finally round this out, again, this is New Jersey. You never know what could happen. In the last gubernatorial campaign, Jack Ciattarelli came really close to defeating Phil Murphy, and we're always kind of looking on to the next election. So I just want to get your final thoughts on how you see the Republicans doing and what they need to do and how they come out of this, win or lose, as a win, so to speak, or what would they call a win if they're not able to actually take the seat, and then again looking to 2025 and that race for governor.
Laura, I mean, different electorates, totally different electorates, a presidential year versus a gubernatorial year. But I would say that if Republicans want to come at, they want to have any chance at all of being competitive, they got to raise money. And people don't like to hear that sometimes, but that is just the reality, is that New Jersey is a hugely expensive state to run a political campaign. You've got to go on New York TV, and you've got to go on Philadelphia TV, and you've got to reach. Your message is going to be heard by people in Long Island and Westchester that are not going to vote in your campaign, but you're paying for that. And it's the same thing in South Jersey. And they need money. And right now, none of the candidates are showing that they can have the money and the resources they need. And Micah is absolutely right. I mean, it's about where the top of the ticket is going to be, and we don't know that. We don't know what's going to happen yet. But right now, it's just not. It's this primary. I have no idea who the nominee is going to be. I think we're going to look and see where the Republican conventions go, whether there is a favorite coming out of there, or whether these organization lines that we talk about so much on the Democratic side also important on the Republican side. And we're going to have to see where filing day takes us. How many times Joey found out about new candidates on in last week that I had never even heard of yet. So we'll see on filing day, March 25th, how many of them wind up filing, how much money they have, how much political support they have, and whether this is a real primary race or not.
All right. David, Joey, Micah, thank you all for taking the time to talk to us and to take a look at the U.S. race for Senate here in New Jersey. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thanks.
And we thank you so much for watching New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we look forward to seeing you back here next time.